Picture this. You're a caveman. You really need to go. And there's nowhere. No toilet. Not even a hole in the ground. Just you, panicking, right next to your cave. For most of human history, this wasn't just embarrassing. Going to the bathroom was actually one of the biggest killers on Earth. And the story of how humans solved this problem, or completely failed to, is way weirder than you think. Early humans didn't have a choice. They squatted in the bushes, behind rocks, wherever was convenient. There was no plumbing, no waste system, nothing. And in small nomadic groups, that was fine. The waste was far from camp, and they moved on before it became a problem. But once humans started settling down, building permanent villages, everything changed. Waste piled up. It seeped into the water people drank from. And diseases like cholera and dysentery spread fast, killing far more people than any war ever did. Where you went to the bathroom wasn't a joke. It was a matter of survival. Here's the first twist. 4,000 years ago, in the Indus Valley, the city of Mohenjo-Daro had something almost nobody else on Earth had. Actual toilets in actual homes, connected to an actual sewage system running under the streets. Most houses had a private bathroom with a brick-lined drain that carried waste away from the house and into a covered citywide sewer. This wasn't a palace feature for the rich. This was just normal city life. For comparison, many European cities wouldn't have anything close to this level of sanitation until the 19th century. That's a 3,500-year gap. The Indus Valley figured out plumbing before most of the world even figured out cities. Rome took plumbing to a whole new level, just not in the way you'd expect. Roman cities had massive public restrooms, long stone benches with rows of holes cut into them, where dozens of people sat shoulder to shoulder. No walls, no stalls, no privacy at all. You'd sit there chatting with strangers while doing your business, like it was a social event. And instead of toilet paper, there was a shared sponge on a stick, called a tersorium, sitting in a trough of water or vinegar in front of the bench. You used it. You rinsed it. You put it back. For the next person. Some historians think the vinegar actually helped disinfect it a little. Others think it barely did anything at all. Either way, every single person in that room was using the exact same tool. Romans even had a goddess connected to their sewers, Cloacina, because they genuinely believed the fumes coming up from underground could be dangerous. So they prayed to a literal sewer goddess just to feel safe going to the bathroom. And then somehow things got worse. After Rome collapsed, all of that engineering knowledge didn't carry forward into medieval Europe. It just disappeared. Most medieval towns had no sewage system at all. People used chamber pots inside their homes, and when those pots were full, they did the simplest thing possible. They opened the window and threw the contents straight into the street. There was even a phrase for it. People would shout "Gardyloo" to warn anyone walking below before they dumped it. If you weren't paying attention, you could genuinely get hit. Streets ran with open waste. Wells got contaminated. And diseases spread through cities faster than ever, eventually setting the stage for outbreaks like the Black Death. A civilization that once built underground sewers had gone back to throwing buckets out of windows. Progress isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it goes backward for centuries.
And here's one more twist before we wrap this up. While Europe was still throwing buckets out of windows, China had already invented actual toilet paper centuries earlier. Records from the 6th century describe Chinese scholars using paper specifically for this purpose. By the 14th century, the imperial court was producing it by the millions of sheets a year, just for the royal family. Meanwhile, almost everyone else on the planet was still using whatever they could find. Leaves, corn cobs, seashells, moss, even pieces of broken pottery, called pessoi, which ancient Greeks actually used and scraped against themselves. Let that sink in for a second. People used broken pottery shards. So while Rome was passing around one sponge for an entire room, and medieval Europe was dumping pots out windows, China had quietly perfected something we now consider the most basic necessity on Earth, 1,000 years before anyone else even thought of it. It eventually took centuries for the rest of the world to catch up, and it wasn't until the modern era that indoor plumbing and toilet paper became something most people could take for granted. So next time you're annoyed about a public restroom line, remember this. At least you're not sharing a sponge on a stick with the entire Roman Senate, and at least nobody's handing you a broken piece of pottery. If this messed with your head a little, subscribe. There's a lot more history that's way weirder than what you learned in school.